This is the third episode of the Great One Piece Readthrough. My name is Zach.
And my name is Ed.
And on today's show, we have special guest, the Dude. Hey, Dude.
Hey, Zach. How's it going?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
Oh, no complaints on this end. Had a really great time rereading through these volumes.
Yeah, these are some good volumes. We're going to be going through volumes 13 through 17. That's going to cover the Whiskey Peak arc, the Little Garden arc, and the Drum Island arc, and it ends perfectly, I think, around the end. I have to check which chapter exactly. We're also going to do the last few chapters of volume 12 from the beginning of Whiskey Peak, so we cover the whole arc. We saved it for this episode. But before we get started, when we have a new guest on, we always ask them about how they got into One Piece. So, Dude, how did you get into the series?
Well, it's funny you flubbed there for a second because I got into the show first.
Yeah, I think we mostly all did.
We've discussed this before with everybody, but it's important to talk about it on this show too.
Yeah, well, to reiterate, the first time I saw One Piece was actually in a Toy Fair magazine. Wizard Publications had a magazine called Toy Fair. It was about action figures. I was really big into collecting toys back then. And for like one of their import reports or whatever, they were talking about One Piece. This was like early 2002, I think. And I didn't really think anything of it. Then I went to Greece that year. My cousins were watching cartoons. Normally I would wake up and watch Dragon Ball because the Greek dub, I wanted to watch it. I was a big Dragon Ball fan. And
imagine it was better than the American dub.
Yeah.
Wait, what episodes of Dragon Ball was this? Off topic.
Over the course of a couple of years, it was like the Fortune Teller Baba arc, King Piccolo, and then right into Z. And I think during that time, I don't remember where it was exactly. But regardless, my cousin was watching this weird show, and there was a kid with a straw hat, and that kind of looked familiar because I had seen it in Toy Fair that previous months. But what really got me was Zoro. It's this character who looks really badass. He's using 3 swords, and they're calling him Blackjack. And I'm like, whoa, that's a fucking awesome name for a pirate. One that uses 3 swords at that. So when I watched it in Greece, it was dubbed in Greek. It was called Drake and the Search for the Treasure.
Oh, right. I've seen that intro before.
And all the characters.
It was really, really poorly sung, right? The Drake intro, if I recall.
It's not the worst. It's not the worst thing in the world, but yeah, it's basically We Are, but dubbed in Greek, and the words are completely different, like the lyrics. Yeah, Luffy was named Drake. Zoro was named Blackjack. Nami was named Bonnie. Usopp was named Gus. And yeah, they were like I thought to myself, because I did some digging up after I saw the show. I went online immediately. I'm like, this is an awesome show. What is it? And then I looked up. I found out very, very little information, but I did find some information about One Piece. And I thought to myself, those are names that 4Kids would probably give those characters if they brought it to America. Like half jokingly.
Maybe not Gus, but the rest of
Yeah. This is Bonnie, because Nami sounds too Japanese.
That's true.
Yeah. And when I got home, like as soon as I got home, I went on eBay and to try to find any One Piece DVDs, and lo and behold, Hong Kong subs.
Oh my god.
The first set I had was actually pretty accurate, but once they got to the Arlong arc, then shit really hit the fan in terms of how terrible these translations were. But it was
some of the
yeah. I was going to ask, have any of the names stuck with you from the Hong Kong subs?
Oh yeah, Luffy was Roof. Usopp was Liar Boo.
I mean, kinda. Translate the name, right?
Usopp, yeah. Nami was spelled the same but with a Y instead of an I. Sanji is sun-kissed. That was my favorite.
Orange soda.
Yeah. And let's see, Zoro alternated between Sulon and occasionally and Zoran. Yeah.
Wait, so now we have Blackjack,
Yeah.
Suron, and Zoran.
And Sunkissed.
And Sunkissed, and the merry
Roof.
crew of the Roof.
Roof. Arlong was Dragon. Arlong's name
That's not confusing.
Arlong's name was localized as Dragon, and Arlong Park was Dragon Zone.
Right. We did a whole podcast.
That was our first special episode, I think.
Like 6 years
Dragon
ago.
Zone. That was the first episode you appeared on, dude.
That's right. And the really tragic thing is, like, the Hong Kong subs dipped in quality like halfway through the Arlong arc. So 1 minute it's Rufy, like R-U-F-I, and which is sort of close to Roof, and like Zoro becomes Sulon, and Usopp was Lyreboo, and I was like, what the hell? Like, that didn't occur to me at all, like why that would be translated the way it was.
Is this the same one where in Logtown Smoker says, "I ate the smoking nuts"?
The smoking nuts.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
Do you still have these anywhere?
I gave them to a friend of mine, but
what is wrong with you?
He lives in College Park, so I can always get them back from him. Well, I as soon as I bought the Funimation DVDs, I'm like, I really don't need these anymore.
No, you don't need them, but they're kind of like those things for posterity. They're just this sounds hilarious.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can always get them back from him. It's not a big deal. I doubt he watches them.
We could go drink and watch Hong Kong.
Yeah, but back then, 2002, outside of Japan, One Piece was pretty hard to come by in the States. Even like English sites, I found like maybe one or two sites in English that had any information on One Piece.
And I think Greg's site, The Grand Line, which had evolved from the Ultimate DBZ info site, may have been started up by then with some One Piece information, but that might not have been easy to find then.
Actually, I was a big fan of Greg before that.
Me too.
I was a big fan of the
guys. We're gonna have to fight who was the bigger fan of Greg.
No. But what I mean is, like Grand Line didn't come onto the scene until like a couple of years after I think I'd gotten into One Piece, at least a year. Because that first year was like, whoa, I'm trying to dig up everything I possibly can. I went to KatsuCon and I saw 2 One Piece cosplayers. That was really exciting. And I bought the animation logbook, and it kind of gave me a little glimpse into
what year was this?
2002.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, 2002 to 2003. And I just kind of dove right in to the anime, really. And I started reading it weekly around the end of Skypiea.
And how was that? Well, actually, we could talk about that if you come on for the Skypiea.
Yeah.
We're gonna get off in a tangent if we do that.
Yeah, but that's basically how I got into One Piece, and you can check out the After Dark episode to find out what happened after that.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the description. That is, I think it's just about been 6 years since we've recorded that episode. So today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite arcs. I don't even think I realized how much they were some of my favorite arcs until I read through them again here. It's just this was probably the quickest I went through the volumes up to this point. And I'm sure it's just going to be quicker from here. And I've finally caught up to where I've read. I have not read past volume 17, so
right.
I won't have the same problem I was having last week.
So, and technically this covers the last 3 chapters of volume 12 and up to right before the last chapter in volume 17.
Yeah. So I think there was a little introduction at the end of 17, right? With a crocodile?
Yeah, there is, but
yeah,
I'd probably still consider that drum.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm sorry, I would consider that the beginning of Alabasta. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
It's kind of a transition into that, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It actually starts like 2/3 of the way through the previous chapter with the stuff with Mr. 2.
Yep.
So why don't we get started from the beginning, though, and talk about leaving Laboon and Twin Capes and going to Whiskey Peak with Ms. Wednesday and Mr. 9.
Before even arriving at Whiskey Peak, we have this like one chapter of shenanigans on the ship, really, which we get some of like a couple of times. Like there's 2 or 3 chapters of it in this set of volumes. And
I think it's a good way to show how crazy the Grand Line is, because we've been hearing about it for the first 12 volumes pretty consistently.
Mary takes more damage during that chapter too.
Mary takes a lot of damage in these. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah. Zoro sleeps through the entire snowstorm thing. So
But yeah, why don't we start with? I really like the first part, the journey from Twin Capes to Whiskey Peak, because we get a lot of the different seasonal things, and you get I think you get an explanation of all the seasons, or is that in the second one? I mixed them up.
No, that is during Drum.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
the drum
right
one.
before Drum. That's right.
For that today.
So I guess we should just talk about get to the action here in Whiskey
Yeah.
Peak. So when you first watched it, what were your impressions? How have they changed? I want to start with Dude.
Oh man, I don't know. Like Whiskey Peak is always, no matter how many times I reread it or rewatch it, it's always very fresh to me, because it moves along so fast, and it's the crew getting to a new island, and within episodes or within chapters, leaving it. It's very to the point. It does what it needs to do, and it's super entertaining. And being a huge Zoro fan, Whiskey Peak is kind of one of my favorite arcs, simply
Really
because
does shine.
he does. That's like a defining moment for Zoro. Like that's the reason he gets his bounty in the first place.
That's true.
And
Well, that's kind of a spoiler, but you had to get a bounty eventually.
yeah, it's still to date, I think, one of the best Zoro moments ever. Like him taking on 100 bounty hunters by himself,
Right, and crushing Miss Monday's face with his bare hands.
Yeah,
Because she's this big nun, and like they think that she's like the strongest person, but he just like you can hear it like cracking when he like, but he doesn't like collapse her head or anything, but it looks really painful.
Yeah, he does. What they do in the anime is they make him look like he's actually having kind of a tough time, but in the manga he just kind of plows through everybody. It's kind of awesome. But yeah, going back and reading it after all these years, it's still just as exciting to me, and it makes me really appreciate like the art and how it's evolved. Actually, it's really interesting to see how much the art has evolved in the last next few volumes. Even just that little bit, it's kind of amazing.
I think Oda starts really hitting his stride in this group. I mean, it's amazing how different even the first few chapters that we go through here at the end of 12 and at the beginning of 13, how different it looks from the early volumes, the 1 through 7. It's such an advancement. I don't remember there was an interview or something where he was talking about his ability to draw fingers and hands, and I think I look at that now.
Is that the one in Color Walk 1? Or that was the one where he was talking about Lanfan's armpits with Toriyama?
Yeah, that was probably Color Walk 1 then, right? I think the Toriyama one was 1.
Oh, and speaking of color walks, I've been following along with my color walks because you get all the color pages and all the full color 2-page spreads that they're not in color in your volumes, so you flip back and forth, and they you get to examine the color pages and the color spreads that much closer and get a little bit of insight into Otis, or at least for the first two where the comments are translated. It's really nice.
Definitely. Ed, what do you're also a big Zoro fan. I think we're going to be gushing about Zoro here for at least the first part of this.
The first part of Whiskey Peak.
What did you first think of Whiskey Peak?
Like when I first watched it? I watched it in the anime, and I didn't think about it that much because I wanted to get to the fireworks factory. And
this is a good fireworks.
So I didn't really regard Whiskey Peak as much the first time I went through the series. It was really in looking back at it, and then even this time looking back at it, I gained an even greater appreciation for it, in that it's one of the more humorous, like it relies on humor a lot and like cleverness and quick character interactions. Like they do the thing with Mr. Five and Miss Valentine, who are annoyed that people are ignoring them while they're trying to fight them, and the whole misunderstanding with Luffy and Zoro leading to their fight. It's just sort of it doesn't take itself as seriously, so it's easier to overlook the first time you read it. But going back at it, you start to appreciate the little things in it, like Zoro interacting with his swords, his new swords.
Yeah,
the Yuashiri is the very light sword, but Kitetsu is the sword that will cut someone's neck even if he doesn't want it to. So he has to like tame the sword. That was really interesting. And we find out that Zoro was approached initially by Baroque Works, this mysterious organization that is, shadily referred to in Whiskey Peak for the first time. It's a bounty like they approached him when he was still a bounty hunter, and he took the guy out who came to recruit him.
Can you imagine like an alternate universe where Zoro had accepted the job and was a number agent?
He'd be a pretty high number, I would imagine.
Like I was thinking about this as I was reading it. Like I wonder what number he would be, because he wouldn't be as good as Mr. One at that point. Because he,
and plus he'd be a little redundant with Mr. One, and Mr. One had his own. Well, we'll talk. I'm not even going to talk about Mr. One, because we could talk about that in the spoiler segment. But no, it would be interesting to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say he's about as powerful as Mr. Five, but I think he's probably
he's much more powerful than Mr. Five from what we see here.
Well, but when he was recruited, he might not have been that.
That's also true.
That's strong.
It's kind of amazing how quickly the Straw Hats become powerful when you read this all in a row. Because they're definitely, they either were always this strong and they're just kind of unleashing things more and more as we go through the series, or they're actually getting significantly stronger as you read it. And it's a tough thing for me to figure out, how much of it were they originally and how much of it are they just bringing out here. And
since this was in volume 13, this is right at the beginning of it. I just wanted to mention Oda's volume comment at the beginning of volume 13.
It's a great one, yeah.
I wonder if you can eat dragons.
Yeah, I love that.
Let's leave that alone for 10 years.
No, the Peace arc. Did you forget? We forgot to go through that. Oh,
yeah. Totally, we skipped those chapters.
So, I agree with you, Ed. This is... Rereading this, Zoro is moving up my rankings as favorite, in my favorite character rankings. There's a reason he's consistently number 2 in the character polls. His badassery here, just to kind of counter the humor that you saw in Whiskey Peak. This also has some of the most badass moments in the series. I'm gonna go so far to say it. Definitely up to this point. Most badass moments in the series, and it's all Zoro, and then counteracted with Luffy and the stuff with Vivi and Karu and
when he takes out Miss Monday, like all the bounty hunters remark that they think that he's the real captain. They think he's the guy with the 30 million bounty on him.
Because why wouldn't you think that?
Yeah, exactly.
He takes out 100 skilled fighters. I also love when they arrive in the village, and I forgot to mention this, they waving their signs, but there's like little hints at everything going on. It was really well done.
There's the little kid or maybe not a little kid, maybe he's a little person, but I
think it's a little kid.
Yeah, the little kid bounty hunter with a Panda Man shirt on.
Yeah, that's a little kid. I think it's interesting that
the Doskoi Panda or the Panda
No.
Man?
It's like a Panda Man shirt.
Oh, okay.
Not Doskoi Panda. And this is the kid that Zoro almost kills with Kitetsu, because Kitetsu has a mind of its own. A couple chapters later.
Dude, you were gonna say sorry.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious that Igaram is basically playing like a weird. He's got an identity on top of an identity on top of another identity. Like he's Igaram, but he's Mr. 8, but he's also Igarapoi.
You're right. It's very confusing.
And it kind of baffles me a little bit that, and I mean, we find this out at the end of Whiskey Peak, but it kind of baffles me that Mr. Zero, Crocodile, allowed Igaram and Princess Vivi, like he doesn't know who they are.
Yeah, I think the whole thing about this organization, we actually have an editorial on our site, I think, from Jill. I'll try and remember to put that editorial as well. Is that the difference between this organization and one in the very recent present in One Piece? That's all I'll say. Is that in Crocodile's organization, no one talks to each other, and that's kind of it kind of hurts them. And I think this is a clear example of it hurting them. Is that if Crocodile, they don't communicate so much that they have major flaws that could have been seen easily.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. And their Baroque works, as you could tell from this chapter, even though they're a scary overarching organization, is not very successful here, and not as good as they could be.
And while we're on Zoro still, did you notice? I mean, it may have been once in the volumes that we did last chapter, and also once here in Whiskey Peak, where he makes a reference to not being able to cut through steel. You can't cut through a steel rope in Whiskey Peak.
Yeah,
Mentioned a couple of times.
Yeah, we'll just put that out there. There's one thing I want to mention, and this is something Greg wrote about years ago, and it's kind of related because a lot of the imagery here, takes place at night. So does a lot of Drum Island, but the moon is very purposely designed to be, this waxing, from crescent toward the beginning of the series, if you pay attention. And it's something Greg pointed out. I'm not taking credit to this. Waxing crescent earlier on, like during, I think,
Kuro, yeah, there's this really great scene where they decide to fight, and there's that crescent moon in the background.
And we get to, I think there's a half moon in one of the arcs. I forget which, maybe.
It's important that we have a full moon in Drum, so.
And we have a gibbous here. And it's interesting, and that continues expanding as they leave Whiskey Peak, and Sanji as they leave Little Garden. I'm sorry, and Sanji notes it's almost full, and then it becomes full at Drum Island. It's this really, really cool thing that who would even think of putting that together? It's a subtle, tiny thing in the background.
Yeah. It also helps that the moon lights up all the action that's happening on Whiskey Peak too.
Yeah, I know you posted a really cool image on Twitter. Dude, of it reflecting in the water as Zoro
challenges.
Yeah,
Baroque works. Yeah,
I didn't even realize it enough going through it even now. But that gibbous moon in the back is just a really cool. It sets a mood.
I just wanted to mention the primary antagonists of this arc are Mr. Five and Miss Valentine, who are notably based on Lenny Kravitz and the model from the 60s, Twiggy. You can tell by the hairstyle and she's definitely wearing mod clothing, that London Austin Powers style.
How did I not know that he was Lenny Kravitz? He totally looks like Lenny Kravitz.
Totally Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah, that's now I can't unsee that.
I mean,
it's Lenny Kravitz circa 1999, Fly, not circa Are You Gonna Go My Way, which is 92.
I mean, that's not official though, right?
I mean, it can't be anybody else.
I don't think he's come out and
said especially with Twiggy, it really can't be anybody else.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know if it's been acknowledged directly.
Was there actually a lot of dude, you were probably more involved in the community back in the day. Was there a lot made of the Zoro versus Luffy fight? Because I remember for some reason hearing that people were it was built up to be more for some reason. Yeah, okay.
No, not at all.
Okay. Maybe I'm imagining that.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. It was. I love the Zoro versus Luffy fight. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We find out that Miss Wednesday is a princess, so she's Princess Vivi, and at one point Miss Valentine smacks her so hard with her weight powers or kilo powers that she breaks the metal band in her hair that's keeping her looking like Miss Wednesday. So when she smacks her so hard that her thing breaks, the hair comes down, and everyone starts. That's when people recognize her as Princess Vivi, I guess.
Also interesting, and I think you've talked about this before on the podcast, dude, is just the character design change between Ms. Wednesday, and I think it happens in Volume 13 from the beginning of it to the end. You could see the difference.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I kind of don't like the character change. I liked when she said "baby" at the end of everything. Same with Mr. Nine. I love Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday. They're hilarious, and they have a really fun aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since the one who's dressed as a king is not actually a monarch.
And actually, there's a thing about Mr. Nine is that he sticks up for Vivi even after even after the Unluckies, the Vulture and
the real villains of this arc. Yeah,
right. Yeah, even after they turn on her and are going after her, he's like, I don't know what all this is, but I trust. I'm with you. I'm with you. So
same with Miss Monday.
Yeah,
Miss Monday comes back to help.
Yeah, the ending of this arc is the real setup. I mean, in the Twin Capes, we get a setup of this is how the Grand Line works, and here we get the setup. Here's how this arc is gonna the full story, the Baroque work story is gonna work.
I think it's actually kind of hilarious that Nami is part of the reason that they got into this mess She tries to blackmail Igaram,
Yeah.
and
A billion berries.
it completely backfires because it turns out like, oh, we actually don't have this money, and also a warlord is after you now.
And we have.
I don't
sketches
think
of
he
you.
knows our faces. Oops, I've been drawn.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the otter that draws, right?
yeah, Mr. 13.
Yes, yes.
I always forget the genders, and
I love the fact that Nami and Zoro don't get drunk.
Oh yeah,
They drink more than anyone, but they never get drunk.
it's hysterical to me.
yeah, and I still live by Zoro's motto, which is, you don't want to drink yourself into a stupor. You want to drink yourself just before that, as much as possible, but you don't want to just completely collapse and lose control of yourself. Just in case, 100, bounty hunters come up and try and kill you. And we also get the introduction, and hold all spoilers, please, for Ms. All Sunday blowing up Igaram's ship, and then
Somehow.
I kind of skipped over the Luffy versus Zoro fight. If there's anything else you wanted to mention.
Oh, I think we just. What else is there to say? It's funny and cool at the same time. I don't know how to.
Yeah, people who give him food can't be evil.
Oh yeah, that is his theme that sticks with Luffy. If you give Luffy food, he'll do whatever the.
And there's a couple of great
Sorry.
gags. I think with Miss Valentine, where Zoro just steps out of the way of her attack, and she basically defeats herself by plowing into the ground.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ms. All Sunday. What did you think of? I don't know if you could remember what you thought of this introduction when you first saw her here. It's a hard thing probably to recall.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But what's nice is that I didn't know. Miss All Sunday. Yeah. I don't know. The arc moves so fast. It's such a fast pace that I didn't really have time to think about it, because she gives them the eternal pose, and then they break it, and then they go on to the next island, and it does put a lot of stuff into perspective. Like, oh, they're immediately somebody's after them, so it's
A bigwig. I mean, that's the number 2.
the biggest wig, you might say.
But it's like she's not. She has her own deal, She has her own. She doesn't just follow the orders. I guess she only follows the orders that she's given. So when she doesn't have orders, she feels the need to basically operate on her own, which, as you said, is one of the weaknesses of the Baroque Works organization.
I think one line that I thought was very interesting was when she shows up and Vivi questions, how did you find out about us? And she says, oh, I let you follow me that one time. That's because that's how they figured out who Sir Crocodile was. And she says, oh yeah, I let you follow me. And I actually didn't pick up on that the first time. It wasn't until this time around that I noticed that, and I think that's kind of weird.
And then Luffy saying that was nice.
Yeah,
it was very nice that she did that for you. No, that's true.
It's like Vivi's just really shitty at espionage to begin with. That Miss All Sunday would just say, "Oh, I'll just let her follow me," and rue her own day.
This isn't the most controlled organization. Everyone in the organization has their own motives.
And we mentioned Luffy, siding with people who give him food. We also have another important trait, and that is that no one could tell him the adventure he's going to go on here. When he crushes the eternal pose to Alabasta, which is interesting. I like that.
And we learned about eternal poses too, in that it points to one island only, or previously with
there was just the log pose.
Log pose.
Oh, there's a line that Sanji says at the very end of Whiskey Peak, where he says, "I'm sorry I missed all the action, but I'll have other chances to show my stuff." It's like he's winking at the camera almost.
I think that was right after Usopp is being dragged by his nose. There's a lot of Usopp being dragged by his nose in these volumes,
which is great.
It happens a couple of times in Drum too.
There's also a lot of really awesome animals in the first one we see here. Besides Karu.
Bunchy.
I'm glad we were all on the same wavelength there with Bunchy.
I love at the end of Whiskey Peak this is about Karoo, but when the Vivi is hastily running around looking for Karoo, and Zoro's like, "You mean this duck right here? He's on the boat already."
I love that. Actually, one thing about Karoo is that, and I can say this about like a character that we're going to meet later on, is in his first introduction, he looks way more like the animal he's supposed to be. Like, he looks completely like an almost photorealistic duck, and then towards the end of Whiskey Peak, his design starts to get a little more simpler and less like fat and big and duck-like.
That's you're drawing the same thing every time. You start drawing it in your style more is probably what happens.
He's a duck with human teeth and no webbed feet.
Yeah.
But Bunchy
He's a ridiculous duck.
Bunchy is a smoking turtle with a cowboy hat and a carpet on the back to ride on.
And I like how they hint at Miss All Sunday's powers without showing them directly.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's it's unreasonable to say at this point that it's obvious she has powers, but we just don't know what they are yet. Like, she's able to put Luffy and all the other people off balance, and they try and come at her. And
So let's head to the adventure on Little Garden. And I just want to say before we start, this is an arc. When I first watched it, I did not like it, and I think it's because of the fireworks factory thing. It's like, come on, I want to get to Alabasta. I want to see the big fight with the big, with Crocodile with this.
And speaking relatively, it's still my least favorite of these three, but it doesn't mean I don't like it. It's just. I
disagree. I
get more I love the humor in Whiskey Peak. I appreciate that more every time, and I love the emotional parts of Drum. And Little Garden it's consistent, and it just doesn't hit me quite as strongly as the other two.
I'll agree with you there. If I had to pick a least favorite of the three, but boy, do I love Little Garden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I like Little Garden a little more than Whiskey Peak. I love all three of them to death. Go ahead.
The thing about these first couple volumes, like between Whiskey Peak and Little Garden, the beginning of the Baroque works stuff that I love is that this is the first time since they left East Blue that you get to see new and interesting powers. Back then, this was especially exciting because I had no idea of any of the other Devil Fruit powers aside from, Luffy, Buggy, Alvida, and Smoker. And then we get to these arcs and we're introduced to a bomb man, a kilo woman, a wax guy. It's
Miss Golden Week's powers aren't Devil Fruit based, but they're still interesting.
Yeah, and these characters that have completely wacky and really cool character designs, like even more so than East Blue. It's like, we're in the Grand Line, we're going to kick things up a notch. Just great character designs all around, and we get to see a little more of the world of One Piece, and Little Garden is a big step into that.
And it's something I kind of miss is you just get kind of non sequitur little parts in the middle. We did talk about this at the beginning of just now too, but even with Little Garden, you get little interactions and a giant dolphin and stuff.
And part of that is there's a line, I think at the beginning of chapter 115, where someone says to Vivi, your cares just melt away on a ship like this. And it's right when they're having fun with the huge dolphin.
Yeah, it's Nami says that.
Yeah, it's very emblematic of like traveling with the Straw Hats. Yeah. And also maybe this is a comparison to Oda's artwork drawing women later on, but really throughout Little Garden and especially in Drum, you really get the sense that Vivi is a 15-year-old girl. She's drawn like a 15-year-old girl normally. Yeah. She looks younger. It's really obvious that she's
completely
pretty
forgot
young.
She was that young.
Yeah, she was supposed to be 15. Okay. She was 9 at the Reverie 6 years prior to this.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about Little Garden because I'm a big fan of this arc. So what did you guys originally think? What do you guys think now? Do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I mentioned before I bought the animation logbook at a Katsucon, like in 2002, and it sort of gave me a glimpse ahead, and I saw like Little Garden as a thing, like dinosaurs and Mr. 3, or this wax guy, and it was really new and exciting. Like I got such a huge boner from like reading or watching.
That's the best adjective.
Well, yeah, it's like a fun boner, not like a Anyway.
Of course, yeah.
Oh, I'm digging myself a deeper hole. So it was at the height of my like I have to get more One Piece into me, and
these are all
yeah. hold on.
So you were saying you have to get more One Piece into you?
Yeah, all right, I get it. So, I love Little Garden, but I think it's not as exciting when you reread it or rewatch it. But you're more interested in stuff like the Giants, and you're like, oh yeah, Elbaf, and oh yeah, these giants were part of a giant pirate crew, and
when you think about that,
yeah, and stuff you kind of overlook, and how easy Mr. 3 was really in the thick of it.
Yeah, the anime is so different in the stakes, I feel like the stakes just feel much higher in the anime because everything takes longer and it's tougher.
Yeah.
In the manga it's like 1, 2, 3, except for the part with the wax candle thing, which does take a while. It's much quicker. Ed, sorry, go ahead.
I actually think Mr. 3 was the thing that I appreciated most looking back at this now. I mean, because obviously it's
well,
he's such an interesting guy. He fancies himself this really genius tactician, but like, and that's the title of volume 14 here. His instinct, his plans. He has intricate plans, but he can't be like, but he loses to Luffy's instinct ultimately.
which is it's this great. They're Luffy and Mr. 3 cannot be more diametrically opposed. They're just so different. Luffy just does whatever he wants. He doesn't think ahead about anything really, and Mr. 3 only thinks ahead. And he's like, "Look, I know I'm not that strong, but if I plan, I could do what I need to do. I'll get my job done."
Mr. 3 is like a Bond villain.
Yeah. I mean, he was literally sipping like margaritas by the pool.
English tea. English
tea. Earl Grey tea.
Yes, else.
Earl Grey.
Which I also enjoy, but I'm not a Bond villain as far as I know.
I mean, like he's one of the Bond villains that doesn't have. Well, they're mostly all brains. Not wrong.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts or comparisons from when you first read it to when you were rereading it here? From anyone?
No, I think Miss Golden Week got a little short shrift because Mr. 3 was so much the brains of the operation. But I loved what she did at the end of the arc, and we'll get there in a little bit.
Well, the things I love more about it in retrospect is I kind of just enjoy the scenery of it a lot, and Oda clearly puts a lot of work into it, and the animals and the creatures and how different it is from anything else we see up through this point and even past this point.
Yeah. And in the vein of what we were talking about last week, Luffy gets stuck under a mountain and in wax this arc.
Well, stuck under a skeleton.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Oh, okay. It was a giant. Oh, it was a giant head. Yeah. Yeah. I liked how you saw the Baroque Works agents interact with each other. Outside of, or being around our heroes. Trying to figure out a way to get the Straw Hats or get the Giants. It's kind of interesting. We get to see them, just hang out.
and just to explain, because maybe I don't know if it's explained, but all of the female agents are based on either days of the week or holidays, and all of the all the men obviously are numbered. But so we have Miss Valentine, Miss Wednesday, Miss Monday, and also Miss Golden Week and
Miss Friday.
Right, Miss Friday. But Golden Week, for those who do not know, is a series of holidays in Japan that take place within 1 week. It's the Emperor's birthday, Greenery Day, Showa Day.
It's in mid-April. It just happened for those who are listening to this when it airs.
Children's Day is one of them.
Yeah, don't you wish you had that when you were a kid?
I feel like it's a way that for the Japanese government to force people to take vacation.
Yeah,
otherwise
I think that might be true. Yeah. No, but trying not to get too far out of it. The Giants are definitely the highlight of this arc. I think they make this arc by far, not just because it's the first time with us seeing Giants, but their backstory. I actually was shedding tears a little bit at the end of it. It's just, and it's nothing like depressing about it. I mean, when Mr. 3 is manipulating them, I think much more than when I first watched it or read it. I'm much more invested in that story for whatever reason. It's just that fact that, you know, it didn't hit me when I was younger as much for whatever reason, but them fighting for 100 years for whatever, for nothing, essentially.
It's for honor. It's for pride.
Yeah. That's something that it's tough to understand, but once you do, it becomes really, really impactful, I think. And seeing you know, how everything wraps up in the flashback and just kind
73,466 battles, 73,466 draws.
And seeing their camaraderie also is just, it's like it's just such a friendship that it hits me for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Yep. And Usopp it really has the biggest effect on him.
This is a very important arc for Usopp.
Yeah, it really shows. I mean, he really takes the lesson from the giants of Elbaf, what it means to be a brave warrior of the sea. Because Usopp, he sort of had the least convincing dream of all the Straw Hats when they set off from Logtown. He's like, I'm going to be a brave warrior of the sea. Well, what does that mean? You know, for Nami, we know what Nami. She wants to draw a map of the entire world. It's a concrete goal. And, you know, for Zoro to be the best, it means defeating Mihawk. Sanji's going to find the All Blue. But what does it mean to be a brave warrior of the sea? What do you do to be a brave warrior of the sea? You do stuff like this. You be like the warriors of Elbaf. You have honor. You have pride. You don't... Again, Mr. 3 is kind of like Krieg in that he likes to rely on gimmickry and what he perceives as his superior intellect to try and trick people and you know, deal dirty, like putting bombs in ale to take the giants down from the inside, which really is the smart thing to do, but it is a dishonorable thing to do.
Well said.
Yeah.
Do you have anything about the giants you want to say?
Yeah. It's just interesting to see these characters show up in One Piece, because it's the first time we really see any sort of living creature outside of a human being. Well, no, that's not true. Fishmen. Well, it's the first time we see a giant, and but that alone, I think, is really huge. No pun intended, because this is.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure that this is a world that is full of possibilities. Like,
I understand.
One Piece is a series. Yeah, One Piece is a series that, like, when you think that you've seen everything, then Oda just comes along and does something that you didn't expect. And I don't think I expected to see giants, honestly.
Yeah, I think once we see that, there's really nothing that isn't possible.
Yeah.
You forget it's this action adventure story for a lot of it, but it's very much a fantasy story as well. And you have a lot of the typical and atypical types of, you know, fantasy heroes and villains. The giants are definitely one of those.
Yeah. And we see it when Luffy is trapped under the skull. We see that, you know, he's talking about he doesn't care about God, but he does object to the fact that it's an unfair battle, because he knows how much Dory has been injured from the bomb in the ale, and he doesn't, you know, but Dory has this pride, the pride of Elbaf. You know, the god of Elbaf will decide the battle, and, you know, you just take what you get and you go for it. And Luffy is really offended by the fact that it's an unfair battle, and he's going to take down the person who made it that way.
Well, what's great is how invested Luffy and Usopp in particular are in this. The two of them specifically have this, like, Vivi doesn't get it, and a lot of the others don't get it, but those two are, like, in it.
No, this is very shonen. This is very much a, like, boys will get this sort of arc.
Yeah.
If we're going by those standards. Something I noticed when I was reading these versus watching them, though, the action doesn't seem to be as clear as it does in the anime.
That's true. That's true.
Like, a lot of the stuff, a lot of this action that happens, it's sort of hard to tell how that's happening or what's happening, I guess. So I am kind of glad that I had seen the anime up to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I understand what you mean there.
Like, I guess a good example would be when Luffy and Karu and Usopp are making, running through the forest, and they just keep going until they crash.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really get the full impact of that from reading it. Stuff like that.
I think
On
something
the other hand, those are also some of my favorite panels in this arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and but
Or-
on the
or-
on the,
or,
on the flip, so go ahead.
Oh, or also in Whiskey Peak, actually, when Zoro's fighting Mr. One and Mr. One does his acrobatics off of the
You mean
off
Mr.
of
Five?
off. I meant Mr. Nine.
Mr. Nine. I was
Yes.
trying to figure out which one.
Right, that's where he was talking about how he can't cut the steel cord.
Oh no! Before that, though, when he tricks Mr. Nine into acrobating off of the building.
Oh yeah. But on the flip side of that, I think are improved. It because of the format of manga where it's sort of there's this not spatial relationship, but there's a temporal relationship between the panels where there's a certain amount of time that passes between each panel. And with Miss Golden Week, with her attacks, where suddenly the tea is good, scenes like that, where it's just like it's something that you can smash cut to because you don't have to show the in between like you do in the anime.
No, that's true. Things tend to move a lot faster in the manga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes it's a much better thing, and later on it's certainly a much better thing. But for these small arcs, I don't hate that they took longer. And sometimes it's better to live with characters for a little while. And I mean, if I were reading this on my first time, I don't know how invested I'd be in everything just because it goes kind of quick. I feel like you'd have to live on the page longer. I mean, on the other hand, there's just some beautiful art from Oda in general that's, done here. And the story's, well put together and it's succinct. And I think he was much better at conveying things much quicker here than he is today. But I think it depends what you're looking for in One Piece and what you care about. If you want to spend more time with the characters or if you want to just get to the next thing. Yeah.
I want to talk about a little bit of the brutality, like we talked about last week. There is a lot of brutality in this arc. Mm-hmm. In particular, Brogy gets wax swords through both of his hands and both of his feet. Mm-hmm. Dory gets exploded from the inside. Zoro tries to cut his own feet off. Things
get set on fire.
Yeah.
Sanji breaks Miss Friday's neck.
Oh yeah. Ugh. That is intense.
Yeah.
Before we get to the Sanji stuff, though, with all the brutality, this is like the most villains versus like the most major villains because Whiskey Peak we had like 100 of them, but you get Mr. Five, Ms. Wednesday, Ms. Golden Week, and Mr. Three all at the same time fighting Luffy and Usopp. Just the two of them, basically.
Because Vivi, Nami, and Zoro, and we can talk about the humor of Zoro picking a good pose to die in too.
Which is that is.
And I think it was also here where he talks about the fact that the wax is as hard as steel and he can't cut through it.
He does say that, and he's like, and when Nami is waxing over, he's like, "Huh, should have chosen a cooler pose than that."
He's quippy even in the face of death.
There's that. I think we've talked about more recently, and this isn't spoiling anything, but the cockiness of Zoro. I think he's always kind of had it. He's kind of had that kind of, I don't know what to call it, like that kind of way about him. And I maybe it's more in the manga than the anime, and that's why I didn't notice it as much. I also want to just remark, Usopp does a very good job here doing his job. I mean, he does the fake runaway and then comes back, but it's also interesting because we have Usopp in the position calling himself captain all the time, but the one person he does, I guess besides Luffy, maybe, it's a debatable thing at this point in the series, but he does call the Giants master, which is interesting. I wanted to point out.
And I thought it was interesting that we really set Sanji apart for the entire arc. He was out looking for food, and he ends up on the thing. And at the end of the arc, you're like, "What's he been doing this whole time?" But then he has this whole.
He does something very important.
But he's kept out for a reason. So.
And he finds out that on the he finds a snail. This is the first Dendenmushi, the first transponder snail, or I think what it's called here, a telephone snail or snailophone.
I think that's the name of the chapter. Yeah.
They call it, it's the copy I have here is Snailophone, but I've seen Telephone Snail too. Snailophone is fine. It's not bad. And we get him, and we get the first glimpses of Crocodile here, and the end of the Unluckies.
Yeah. Well, it's also we get the bit with Restaurant Le Crap. This is the crap restaurant.
Or the shitty restaurant.
The shitty,
yeah. I do like the Le Crap thing.
So restaurant.
So a final. There's a few final things that happen at the end of the Little Garden. We see that Smoker is in fact still chasing them, and finds a Mr. 11 and is listening into the conversation with Sanji, which is interesting. We
also see a little bit of Crocodile's powers.
Yeah,
they're not completely telegraphed here, but we see that he dries up the flower and sucks all the water out. So it's an interesting little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah, it's nice to know that Oda definitely had a lot of things in mind prior to actually putting them together, which is really cool. And then the Straw Hat crew heads off through a goldfish.
There's also there's a few other things. I just want to talk about the Candle Champion. It's a really innovative. I love the design of the Mr. 3's Candle Champion at the end of it, where he's basically just like. It's an ultimate boy thing. It's very like Sentai. It's like a Sentai villain.
Yeah.
Where he puts himself in this gigantic wax armor that he thinks it's unbreakable. He's a lot like Krieg. He thought that his armor was invincible, but his armor gets smashed. And the candelabra is ridiculous. That's all I have to say about it.
So we get a little flashback of Dory and Broggy, which we talked a little bit about, that it was just a contest of who had the bigger one.
Which we get again with Zoro and Sanji, and we see that
at the beginning of the arc, yeah.
Well, no, and then at the end, but it with Zoro and Sanji, they have a captain who can rein them in, and so they don't bicker the whole time. Unlike Dory and Broggy,
they were both rival-ish captains, I guess.
They're co-captains.
Co-captains,
yeah. They disbanded their crew, so.
Well, they had to settle, which
they had to settle the thing. Yeah.
I love when Zoro asks Usopp, "Hey, mine's bigger, right?" And he just goes, "I don't care."
And they take down the candelabra with a rope soaked in oil, which I think Oda got that from Home Alone 2.
I believe it. I actually do believe that is where he got that from. So then we head into probably one of the best transitions from one arc to the next, and that is Nami falling ill here, and it connects to Little Garden as we find out later. And also Vivi's kind of freak out when she finds out just how bad things are in Alabasta, and also when we learn when Sanji and Usopp and Luffy never get sick ever. But
that's true. I didn't notice that until I read it this time.
I'm like, wait, what?
I don't know. I've never been sick. What?
Yeah.
Vivi has the correct reaction, asking whether they were even human, because that seems impossible. And then everyone simultaneously freaking out and all that fun stuff. I don't want to go panel by panel, but there's a lot of funny stuff there.
One thing, we have the eternal pose now for Alabasta. So that was I'd forgotten how they ended up getting that, but it was with Sanji at the end of Little Garden.
The Unluckies
brought it.
Right,
yeah.
They brought it.
I should have mentioned that. I'm sorry.
And then Mr. Zero was like, "Have Mr. 3 killed. He lied to me," after hanging up the phone on him.
Like even the slightest, it's funny that even the slightest bit of incompetence, you're disposable in the eyes of Mr. Zero.
And we get that little scene with Mr. 11 with Smoker and Tashigi, where Smoker is a really clever guy. He's like, "Yeah, what about those orders you found in your pocket? Crap, the orders in my pocket." Haha, there weren't any orders in your pocket, but now we know that there were.
Yep.
Very clever.
It's an older gag, but it works with Smoker. So they head off and they decide. Vivi makes a whole speech like we have to go to Alabasta, in order to get there the quickest, we have to save Nami first.
Which I think is a very rereading that bit, that makes me like Vivi a whole lot. Like that's such a nice thing to do.
It was such a weird I mean,
and responsible.
Oda was clearly trying to make you think that Vivi was just being selfish, and you even see Luffy's look like, what's she gonna say here? And when she ends up saying the right thing, everyone is like, yeah, I'm on board. Ed, what did you want to add? You sounded like
I had nothing in particular, but I do like the fact that we were setting up, and we get it with the scene later on in Drum where they go back, the flashback into the Reverie with Dalton. But we really see that she's a very savvy politically and selfless person. I think she has quite a good tactical mind, at least, as she understands that you can't get to Alabasta without, a healthy navigator. The Grand Line isn't going to allow that.
I do want to say, now that we're up to this part, though, that the introduction to the villains of Drum Island is one of my favorite introductions in the series.
It's cold.
It is cold, but just seeing I forget all of the henchmen's name, but seeing him
Chess,
just standing on the water. Yeah, exactly. It's cold today. I didn't get your reference for a second. Sorry, dude.
It's okay.
It's just great.
Yeah, I love him and Kuromarimo at the end. Remember us, remember. And the anime is hysterical because he does it in the worst English. Remember us, please.
I don't remember that. I gotta watch that in Japanese again.
It's really great. It's amazing. And Wapol.
Before we get to that, did you notice the gag where Nami is so sick that she burns Luffy's hand?
Yeah. Really good.
I like to mention gags when they come up. There's just much discussion to be had, but I just like noticing all of Oda's funny gag moments.
Well, Wapol is a gag moment when we first meet him, at least, in him eating literally everything. And I do mean literally in the...
Yeah. Towards the end of the arc, they read off what he had eaten that day. It's like you had a barbecue house and a cannon in butter for breakfast.
I hear we see him, he eats a sword, and then he eats the side of the Mary as we talk about more damage the ship is taking. And then an anchor rope, and then so on and so forth. And
tries to eat Luffy on several occasions.
Does not work, though.
Tries to eat Chopper, yeah.
I liked, dude, what you pointed out about this first fight with Wapol compared to the last fight.
Oh, yeah, it completely, the end of each fight mirror each other. Luffy's Gum Gum Bazooka, when he pulls back, that same shot is mirrored when he deals the final blow to Wapol with his Gum 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 Bazooka.
How many Gum Gums is that? 50 Gum Gums or 100 Gum Gums?
It's as much as 1,500 Marchand Gum Gums. I don't remember that. I don't remember the exact thing.
Okay, I'm sure it's at least enough Gum Gums to Gum Gum the situation.
Yes. We have the ongoing gag of Luffy being really slow in this arc to pick up on things.
Mostly,
I think it has to do with the cold.
Yeah.
He's that guy, what is it, the neurons in your brain take 1 second to get there, but he'll be touching a stove and he'll be there for 10 seconds waiting to feel it.
That's right.
Oh, wait, it's hot. No, that is a great gag. Things go much quicker at the beginning in the manga than I remembered in the anime. I feel like the beginning, I don't want to say drags, but takes a little longer in the anime for Drum Island. Am I wrong? Am I making that up?
It seemed pretty well paced to me. Actually,
I haven't watched.
I feel like we had a lot more Zoro. I'll put it that way in the anime.
Yeah. They padded that a little bit with Zoro.
Yeah, because we barely see Zoro, although we do the same thing happens to him. It's just we see a lot less of it.
We get the hiking bear.
Oh, the hiking bear, yes.
Oh my god, the hiking bear.
It's a bear. Just nod. No, move along.
And
the lady who looks like the hiking bear.
Maria Onion Bear.
Yeah, Maria Onion Bear.
Yeah. They do translate that in the SBS in the next volume.
Yeah, what's the Japanese? Because you know that off the top.
Negi Kuma Maria, which is just onion bear Maria.
She carries onions around. That's all you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And bow to her because she'll get angry if you don't.
I like I like how specific they are with how sick Nami is. It's 107.6 fever. She pretty much should be dead. She should be dead.
verge of death or dead, at the very least.
That's the equivalent of Zoro losing 3 liters of blood. Like that's
And Zoro goes for a brisk swim in the river.
So, I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, which is taking as long as it probably should, but the animals. And this arc has some of my favorite animals in the show. I mean, we get Robson.
Robson White Walkie.
Who is just awesome. I love all the explanation that goes behind him.
Yeah, Robson the Lapon.
Yes.
Cute little.
And
the hiking bear we mentioned.
Hiking bear, and of course the snowbirds. They're the star, really.
Yes, the snowbirds that make Wapol have the face.
That's right, the face. But then, of course, we have Chopper.
That's true. He's also an animal.
Yeah, I mean, he's also a man. He's like an animal man.
He's not a reindeer man. He's a man reindeer.
Even Dalton is an animal. It's the first Zoan fruit we see.
That's that. Yeah, it's actually before we see Chopper. We see Dalton is the ox fruit model bison.
That's right. That's huge.
And actually, right at the beginning of this arc is the first mention of the Blackbeard Pirates. The country had been defeated by pirates. That's why Wapol was out on the sea in the first place.
We'll talk about that a little more in the in the next.
But
segment.
there's 5 pirates and they destroyed the country basically. And you get the sense Drum is repairing itself. Drum is recovering, and they can only recover because their ne'er-do-well, terrible king left. He was scared away.
Yep.
And it's interesting. I want to talk more about it a little later, but just like this is the first real royalty. I mean, besides Vivi, obviously, but royalty enemy that we see. Yeah, it's definitely something I do want to touch on. But this is Luffy and Sanji, taking Nami to the mountain, and mostly Luffy taking both of them after the avalanche. The anime does a great job with showing how brutal this is.
It's a lot quicker in the manga. It's not nearly as brutal.
Yeah.
It says 3 hours later, and it's between
By the way, I love that. I love the 3 hours later. That makes me just want to hug hug the volume. Like, thank God.
That we don't have to see all 3 hours, you mean?
That's right. Or it getting broken up in increments.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, I like how the anime, it kind of makes the struggle a lot more visceral, that there's more of it.
Yeah.
It depends what you're going for again.
And just to mention another gag that I really liked is Usopp being awakened from the avalanche by Vivi, who's smacking him in the face repeatedly. And Usopp he doesn't have a mirror or anything, so he's just like, hey, my face feels kind of swollen. It's like he's been attacked by a hornet's nest.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And they reuse that image as like one of the in between pages when there's an odd number of pages in the volume.
It's a great gag.
So it's just like a bomb in the chapter just to make you laugh.
And then later on, Zoro only recognizes Usopp because of his nose.
They do that like 3-panel thing where he zooms in on the nose a little bit.
Yeah, I love that.
Just to bring it back to the serious stuff, Vivi is really ashamed of Wapol.
Yeah.
They have a history together. They went to the King's Council 6 years ago,
the reverie,
where they held up a picture of Dragon and said, in 5 to 6 years, this man will be a serious threat to the world government. And Wapol's like, fuck that. You guys got problems. My country is fine. And Cobra, we find out is Vivi's father, says, what the hell is wrong with you? And Wapol is offended that someone would stand up to him, even if it is another king. So he does what any reasonable person would do, and he smacks a 9-year-old in the face.
I mean,
well, yeah,
of course.
You gotta keep your kids in check, man.
Or other people's kids.
Other people's kids.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the introduction of Chopper, because it's adorable.
Well, the introduction of Chopper, I wouldn't say is adorable.
Oh, no, not the very introduction. Yeah,
the very introduction of Chopper is like a red herring.
Yeah, he's introduced as her beloved reindeer, Dr. Kureha, the 139-year-old.
Glad you got that right. She's not 140.
Yes,
no.
Witch doctor of Drum Island. It's she's coming down with her tight leather pants and belly button piercing, and
I love Kureha. She's such a great character.
I love the fact that Masako Nozawa gets to play
Someone closer.
Yeah, like an old lady for once, you know. She doesn't have to be Goku. She doesn't have to scream all the time.
I mean, she's closer to a 139-year-old spunky woman than 80 male members of a family of varying age. She's not 139. She's 70.
I mean, and
something. But
this distracts a little from our manga discussion, but just she really knocks it out of the park in the anime. I love her performance.
I couldn't imagine anybody else as Kureha.
No, she's perfect. Yeah, I agree. This arc in the anime also, because it has very different and new music, and this is probably Dude's forte here, definitely. I think just makes it just so unique in the series. You know,
it does, but rereading it, it's really the words that are the most powerful part of it.
I think it's a great supplement, though.
Like, Kureha has this really great line right before Chopper's passed about, can this country, can you heal his heart, which is an ongoing theme throughout this arc.
Yeah.
And it really, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to talk about it, but we're talking about Chopper's sort of internal psychological pathology in that he has been rejected by everyone. He was rejected by the humans, he was rejected by the reindeer, and he doesn't accept himself. So in the fight where Luffy's taking on Walpole, he says, he referred to him as one of us, he referred to me as a friend. You know, you have to be able to accept yourself, and he's able to do that because Luffy accepts him for who he is. So Chopper's able to.
It's the Gur and the Gon. Don't believe.
It really
is. Believe in the me that believes.
Yeah, it is. It's a common theme, but it's very strong. When someone believes in you, you can believe in yourself.
That's true. I don't think I've thought of it like that.
Yeah, because that's what they mean by heal his heart is, and I think I wrote it down in my notes toward the end of the thing, but it's a really powerful thing to understand that you are not alone in this world, and you aren't, there are people out there. You can go out and have an adventure. You don't have to stick around, behold yourself to this whatever you feel like is holding you back. You can move forward.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about the flashback?
Yeah,
because I'm kind of itching to talk about the flashback.
Then let's talk about the flashback.
Do you want to talk about the flashback?
I will, and I'll say I'll begin by saying that it's. I love how the flashback is framed.
Yeah.
Right before Wapol's about to get a sock in the face, and then the flashback happens, and you kind of forget about it up until the flashback ends, and it just. Luffy finishes his punch, and it's amazing, and it's completely extra justified because now you've gotten a little more about backstory about Wapol and what kind of a dickhead he was.
He was hoarding doctors. It's a country known for its medicine, and he's expelled all the doctors except for 20, and he hoards them in his castle and makes people beg. He makes them beg for medical treatment to keep absolute power over the people. That's not how you're supposed to rule, man.
Wapol's definitely one of the more despicable characters we've encountered today.
Oh yeah, he's a bastard.
Yeah.
But then you have Kureha and you have Hiruluk, the last doctors in the country who are basically the rebels in this case versus the Empire.
Yeah.
It's kind of a neat story, but the real star of the backstory, of course, is Chopper, and his friendship with Dr. Hiruluk, and after rereading the Arlong arc, I was like, man, I should rethink my favorite flashbacks because I love, like, the Nami flashback is amazing. And then I reread the Chopper arc today, and man, it's just, you feel for him so much. You just want to give him a great big hug.
The Chopper, it's so hard to rank them. They're all different in, like, different ways, and maybe one day, maybe when we're done with the read-through, we'll rank the flashbacks. We might have done it way back. I don't remember.
I think you get more of Dr. Hiruluk than you get of Belmare. So maybe, I don't know, and a little bit more of their relationship. There's the flashback.
It's much longer. It's significantly longer. This is the longest flashback we get up to this point by far.
Hiruluk's kind of a bastard, Well, he's running around like giving people unnecessary medical treatments that absolutely will
bastard's not the word you're looking for. A misguided idiot.
He's a
maybe?
he's a fool.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but like
Bastard implies malintent, and he really doesn't have malintent.
No, he's got a good heart, and that's what he says. The cornerstone of being a good doctor is having a good heart, which is what he says to Chopper. Give him that big hug. One thing I'll say about Chopper's design is that I miss this Chopper. I miss this, like...
I really do, too. Yeah.
Like, he doesn't look like a cute little mascot. He looks like an actual character.
And when they do... Oda does such a freaking great job with this flashback. Not to gush too much about Oda. I mean, I think we're okay doing that on the One Piece podcast, but... you get the desperate moments of Chopper at the beginning, you get the hopeful moments of Chopper with Hiruluk, you get there are several full page spreads of just no text and just it's so well done. It's so well done.
There's a lot to be said about the art. There's a lot of show versus tell during the flashback, which is really great. Like when Chopper sets out to find the mushroom for Hiruluk. Or even when, Chopper's just kind of sitting there and contemplating what it means to be someone's friend. I also particularly love the sequence where he runs into the tree and he just kind of gets up and fixes his hat and just keeps going. I don't know. And he just has this blank look on his face. I don't know why. I just love it.
Yeah. It's such a heartbreaking... It's hard to even read through. Where do you want to go next with it, Ed?
Oh, well, they just... I mean, he's shunned as a child. He's shunned by humans. He's shunned by reindeer. And the quack doctor is the only person who recognizes him. And he ultimately manages to convince Correa to take him in, to give him the knowledge part, because he already has the heart.
Well,
Hiruluk showed him what it means to have a heart, but Correa gives him the knowledge. So a lot like with Nami, where they have the father influence and the mother influence, it's sort of the same thing here, but the roles are kind of reversed, where Hiruluk, the father figure, is giving him heart, but the mother figure is giving him
and
knowledge.
Also much more pronounced. I think it's Genzo, right? A little less with him. I think he's a little less of an... He's there and he's very important to her, but just you see it less. It's less visible. Here, Hiruluk and Correa are both super, super influential to him as a person, and we see them both being influential. I do want to I do want to talk about the turnabout that Hiruluk makes when he realizes he's going to die, and he does the Harry and the Hendersons thing.
Yeah.
Get away! I hate you. Never. I don't want to see you again. Just exactly what that is.
Goodbye, my friend.
Oh my god, that's exactly what it is.
There's also that scene with when they first meet where Chopper's eating bread and crying.
Oh my god,
that's so good.
Rip my heart into pieces.
And it's so heartbreaking, especially it's so heartbreaking here when she get away, never come back, and then he goes and he still wants to save his, he figures out what's happening and he goes to save his life. And then ultimately gives him something that would kill him.
Yeah,
with a hug.
What I love is Kureha and and how much she actually cares about Hiruluk as a friend, where she puts up this giant facade about. God, I love this. I love this line where she says, "You expect me to take over your fool's research and look after your weird pet? You keep piling up all these requests because you're gonna die. Chill out." And then she finds out that, oh shit, he is actually going to die. Yeah. Now.
And there's the significance of the skull and crossbones, where we find out later on that Hiruluk tells this story to Chopper about a man in the far west who is healed by the sight of blossoming of cherry blossoms. And we find out that was Hiruluk, and that, why not go back? She says, why not go back to the West and try and find those cherry blossoms? He says, no, this is my home country. I have to, there's something sick in the minds and the hearts of the people of this country, and I think I can heal it.
I love that. It's so ambitious.
It gives me chills thinking.
When is a
about
man
that.
forgotten? Is it when he,
Don't do this to me.
when he's shot, when he's poisoned, when he drinks the poison? No, he's a man is only gone when he is forgotten. And
Yeah.
there's a way, because we know that the previous king was a good king. He was a good man. Dalton loved him. Dalton served under him, and Walpole believes in ruling only through power and fear and like forced submission. And we see the contrast with that with Cobra and Vivi. There's differing theories of like what it means to be a ruler, and it carries on into the next arc. But it's a very philosophical thing, and it's sort of a side thing with how Walpole rules. I mean, obviously he's the bad guy; he's rule in a bad way, but we see clear parallels going forward.
And damn, they do such a freaking great job with Dalton in this flashback. And I forget about that. I forget about him as a character sometimes. But they build the lore. Obviously, we'll talk about it a little later with him in the Reverie. But they also do just such a great job at how Chopper and Hiruluk both affect him, both in the flashback and when we come back from the flashback. And he's such a redeemed. I don't want to say redeemed character because he didn't. He was always kind of aware of the situation he was in, and it all came together so well for him.
What breaks my heart every time is Chopper realizing that he was the one that killed Hiruluk and misunderstood what the skull and crossbones meant. It's sort of like it's the worst kind of irony.
Yeah.
It is. It's something that we're reminded of later. Like Hiruluk says, he raised the skull and crossbones against all disease, and Hiruluk is the guy who believes that there is a panacea, that there's something that can cure all diseases. And Correa is like the cold, hard knowledge of the fact that there isn't really something that there isn't a medicine that can cure all disease. But Chopper has the dream to be the doctor to cure all diseases. There isn't one cure, but maybe he can be that cure. But that's where the knowledge part comes in, where he has to learn under Correa for the next however many years.
And any final thoughts on? And we could talk about it forever on the flashback before we get into the final fight.
I think it's interesting that the flashback has another flashback within it.
Yeah. We'll talk about. I want to talk about that in the more spoilery segment because there's definitely a lot more to talk about there for that. For those who've read it, you know what happens.
Oh, and Dalton looking out for Chopper at the very end. He's like, "Yeah, leave here, just leave," and he was really looking out for him. He saw the kindness in his heart. Maybe the sickness in the hearts of the country will be healed because of this. But
I was reading this flashback all in a row. I think on one of the flights to Dallas or from Dallas, and damn, it's definitely the highlight of this package of volumes for me. It's just so Oda like finally is in his comfort zone. I feel like, especially with this kind of thing, and it's so heartbreaking, and it's such just great life lessons in general. It's just so it's the parts I love about One Piece is it's, I won't use the word relatable, but it's these truisms that are just that people don't always get. Anyway, let's talk about the rest of the fight because Wapple turns into a house and eats his minions and turns them into one person. But by one person, I mean he's standing on the shoulder of the other guy.
I was never. It was never quite clear to me that was actually what it was.
Yeah, no, he says that. Isn't he just riding piggyback? Isn't that what's happening?
I think that's what Luffy reacts to. I'm not sure.
Sanji. And Luffy's like, "That's cool. They became one guy."
Yeah, and we get a lot of stuff with the flag.
Yeah.
In the second part of the fight, which is the fact that hoisting the skull and crossbones means risking your life. It's not something to be laughed at or shot down. It's a really important thing for pirates to understand that, you risk your life when you set out to do this. You risk your life to have the freedom to do what you want. At least as Luffy's conception of being a pirate is to have absolute freedom.
And look, as per usual, Luffy doesn't know what the hell happened in Chopper's backstory. And yet he knows that this is something important to him, and therefore he will protect it, which is instinct, I guess. Dude, what do you think of this fight? and everything that happens.
Just the finale?
Yeah, the finale.
Wow, it's great. The Chopper fight with Chess Marimo is really cool. Get to see Chopper's transformations, which is
Rumble Ball.
Rumble Ball, super cool stuff. I think it's really funny that Sanji tries to fight, but has to sit out another arc. And
he broke his back.
He really did.
Yeah,
he super broke his back. And Luffy's fight against Wapol is kind of hilarious because Wapol's constant attempts at fighting Luffy just continue to backfire, like some terrible Acme villain, like Wile E. Coyote.
Totally.
And I love that final blow. Like Luffy's arms stretch out so far.
Yeah,
it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. And just to talk about a little thing, I want to mention this before we get too far away from it, where Zoro gets his. They find Zoro, frozen, having gone for his brisk swim, and he takes out some of the soldiers just to get their clothes. He's like, "Those are enemies, right? Okay, I'll take their clothes."
Yeah.
And then, when he calls out Usopp for not wanting to go to the castle, it's like Usopp stands up. He does it again. He stands up and he's going to carry Dalton. And that was that end of that chapter. And the beginning of the next chapter was, this isn't going to work. Zoro has to carry him.
Yeah.
So he has to carry him over to the rope thing, where Dalton puts on a suicide vest.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I think it's also interesting that we don't actually see the full extent of Wapol's powers aside from a small flashback panel.
Well, he does eat himself.
Well, what I mean is when his
the full artillery.
Yeah, his attempt to make himself a living weapon.
Yeah.
You only see it in a little tiny flashback.
Yeah. Does not work out because Nami has stolen the key.
I love that every once in a while here you get like this entire set that we've been talking about these last couple of volumes. Nami's still a thief at heart. She's the rogue. She steals stuff. She's good at bluffing. She's good at convincing. Blackmail with the key at that. So
which harkens back to that line she has like earlier before the flashback of like, oh, you wake up for 5 minutes and you're already trying to seduce my reindeer. It's like, do I need your permission to seduce him? It was what she says to Rhea. Which is interesting that I think he might be the only character to be invited to join the crew
by Nami?
By Nami, not by Luffy. Luffy isn't the one who invites him initially. She doesn't even. Nobody even. I think Nami's the only one who even knows he's a doctor.
He did. Yeah, he did save her life. It makes sense. That's why she would ask. I mean, beyond the other reasons.
Right.
So yeah, Luffy blasts Wapol into the sky after he offers him Vice King, which he for some reason decided not to take. And we get the conclusion here where everyone is on the mountain and discussing Chopper joining the crew, and also Correa saying how much rest, the whole bartering between Nami and Correa here.
Yeah. It's really sort of touching the way that Correa ultimately makes him go, makes him leave, and let me just flip my notes here, but
just shut up and come with us, though, right?
Yeah, just shut up and come with us, man. They can heal his heart. He's they talk a lot about. There's a lot of talk about monsters in this arc, and that was another way of, I think Sanji was showing Chopper that he is not alone. That there are other people, there are other monsters like him out on the sea, and you aren't necessarily unique that way.
Yeah. Dude, anything you want to talk about Chopper joining at the end? All that stuff?
No, it pretty much got it, actually. It's such a nice, touching... It is a very touching story. It's almost as if Krehan was just waiting for this day, and she already had planned out, how it would go.
Well, she packed the bag and put it in the sleigh for him.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny. Kreha, the entire time Wapol's there, she doesn't bat an eye. She's very much like, yeah, this will get resolved. Like it's
And
it's
that's another thing, because we haven't had a villain who really tests the limits of the characters just yet.
Soon,
Mr. Three gets all. I mean, he has. I mean, Whiskey Peak is kind of a comedy. Comedy arc.
You mean Little Garden?
No. Whiskey Peak. Little Garden, you have Mr. Three, who has intensive plans, and he has, but Luffy's able to break out of it. He defeats him with instinct, ultimately. And Wapol is a ridiculous person. I mean, he's horrible, but he's ridiculous. So we really get the sense of we're building towards something here where there's got to be a person out there who can really test them.
Well, we're building to a lot of things because as this arc closes, we learn Gold Roger's real name was not Gold Roger; it was Gold D. Roger, which I forget how early that reveal was. But and there's a whole thing with that middle initial that I'm just gonna say right here: we don't know what the hell, you know. We don't really know anything about that to this day.
I'm sorry, just to go back one more thing. One reservation I think that Chopper had about leaving was that he felt that the doctor's research was not completed. Yeah. And showing that to him as he's leaving, after she's forced him to leave, and he rides the sleigh across the sky with Luffy, across the full moon, with Luffy hanging off the back of it. I love that panel, by the way.
Oh, and the actual...
That is such a good panel. There's no text at all. It's just so beautiful.
And with the actual cherry blossoms, which...
And they also foreshadowed that full moon, because 3 days before,
right,
when they first arrived, the moon's almost full. 3 nights later. But it's really... He can let go of that now. He can let go of it, because the doctor's research is completed, and they've defeated Wapol. They can start to heal the country. He's like, there's nothing holding him back at that point. There's nothing... He feels free to go with these people who say that they believe in him, and... They're like him, and he can have an adventure now. He can have his own adventure. He's not just reliving or filling out the doctor's dreams.
And that last page when he's crying.
Yeah.
Okay.
It gets me every time.
Yeah, when the heart of the country's been healed.
Yeah.
And I also like one of the few times the Oda boxes are like the tale of this kingdom will be told and is a story for another time, which is just like, what? When are we gonna hear that? It's something I'm very interested in. I was talking a little bit about the Willa D stuff. Correa as a character seems immensely interesting, and I'll talk about this a little more later. But as what her past is and. She's
is the oldest.
39 years old, yeah.
141 now.
I mean, the giants are older, probably, but
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a appearance of this mysterious man called Ace at the end of the arc,
which we'll talk about a little later.
Yeah.
They get we find Karoo at the end of the arc. This is how we find out that Chopper can talk to animals, because he was originally an animal. He's like, Karoo went into the Zoro disappeared, so he went into the river, and Zoro had just been saying, "Oh my God, stupid duck gets stuck in the river." He's like, "This was all your fault," and I think Vivi smacks him.
And
I love that gag.
The last thing I want to mention is just not only how nice it is to read, but how important it is to see Chopper interacting with everyone right after.
It's the most fun he's ever had.
Yeah, it's this like kind of heartbreaking, kind of like not heartbreaking, heartwarming set of scenes. It's perfect. It's a perfect way to end everything there. I think that's a good place to leave things. Any final thoughts on this set of volumes?
Nope.
That you may have? No. Okay, then let's get into the reverie. Thank you all for listening to the Red Line, our non-spoilery segment. We're going to go into some spoilers, so if you do not want to listen, skip to the end, where we'll be talking about what we're doing next week. So we'll see you there. This is the Reverie segment where we come together and discuss how things look in retrospect, knowing what we know today. I think starting backwards may actually be the best idea since it's freshest in our heads going through this. We have... what I said in the last segment's true. We really don't know much more about the Will of D, but boy, was this an important reveal when it happened. And in retrospect, it's like, of course, Correa probably knew something about this. I mean, what do you guys think Correa's piece in the story is going to be, kind of going with everything we know and going forward?
Oda doesn't make her 139, well, now 141 after the time skip, for no reason.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. There's got to be something that happened that she was... I mean...
How does she live that long?
Pickled plums.
That's
pickled plums.
Or plum wine, I
and
think.
Plum
actually.
wine, both.
Plum wine, yeah.
She likes both, I think, right? Because Dalton mentioned she also likes pickled plums. Yeah.
And he likes chestnuts.
Yeah.
Although that was
we forgot to mention that gag. I love that gag.
There was a funny thing in the SBS where Dalton's always giving unnecessary information. It's like, and she likes pickled plums too. And there was another one. I'd have to look it back up, but yeah, Dalton always with the unnecessary information.
We learn about Gold Roger's real name. We learn about the Willow D. I don't know what more there is to discuss about it.
The Blackbeard Pirates.
That's the big thing, and it's the outlines even look really accurate, which is cool.
Unlike the Seven Warlords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know when I first saw Gold D. Roger, I was like, "Come on, that's a dumb name."
I agree.
I still think it's a dumb name.
I do too. I agree with you, dude. It's stupid. But I mean, it's important to the story. I trust what he's doing here. Gold Roger sounds way cooler than whatever the hell Gold D is. I think it's just the lack of knowing how that would work in English, and it doesn't. I don't think. Yeah. So yeah, anything more about Blackbeard that you guys wanted to mention? Because that is a really cool foreshadow. We don't see him until Jaya, and yet that's cemented there.
Well, it's the fact that this guy Ace is chasing him and he's pursuing.
Ace?
Yeah, who's Ace? And have you seen this pirate with a straw hat? Tell him I'll be in Alabasta for 10 days. Come on.
He is on the cover for the next volume. So.
Well, it's the next volume is entitled Ace Arrives.
Yeah.
That's the title of the volume.
And Poochie aside.
Yeah. Hey guys, check out this awesome new character. Look how cool he is. He's got a knife.
Well, he's wearing a black cloak in this, which is way cooler than the other.
Oh, and the foreshadowing of it didn't snow in the village that day.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means he's got awakened powers.
Actually, it's not a bad theory there.
Well, Ace is what, 20 years old at this point? 19 years old?
19, I think.
19?
It's
right, because Luffy's 17 and he's 2 years old.
I don't know if you've listened to the most recent podcast episode, but we dubbed you the arbiter of Poochies in the series, dude.
Well, is it in response to a pieced together question about is Sabo
the new Poochie? And you said you did a whole series of tweets that I mentioned. It's Ace is a Poochie. Ace is definitely a Poochie.
Sabo is not. Law is a Poochie.
Law I think was a Poochie. I think he is no longer a Poochie. Sabo was the opposite, but I don't think he is a Poochie, but I think now people think he is.
I think Law still has Poochie-esque tendencies.
Oh, we should mention Poochie is we mentioned this last time again, but Poochie is the cool kid coming to town that people or marketers have created. It's probably the best way to put that.
Yeah.
Quickly. Sorry. Go ahead, dude. Sorry.
No, but that's it. Yeah, Law still has Poochie-esque tendencies. Like, I'm still the cool guy. You know, all the girls are gonna fawn over me regardless. Like, it's, look at this cool thing I'm gonna do.
Well, Sabo Koala's not like fawning over Sabo, and
she gives him shit actually.
Yeah, well,
I like that about her. She's sassy.
Did Ace have girls fawning over him in the cover stories? I can't remember that.
No, there was just the one. What the Marine officer's daughter? Yeah, the
Moda.
Yeah, I remember that.
We didn't.
I wanted to talk about the cover story. Yeah,
cover story. Yeah.
Well, Django's we'll talk about next time, I think, because that doesn't end until. Oh no, did it end in this one?
No,
it didn't. Yeah, so we'll talk about it next time. But I do Kobe and Helmeppo. I'm glad we're talking about it in this segment because
they're at Navy headquarters. They're further along in the Grand Line than anywhere we've seen.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it's also very important for what goes forward is you have Garp, who we find out later is Luffy's grandfather, who I think we may have mentioned in this segment before. And we know Kobe and Helmeppo come back, and this is probably, I don't know, I've been rereading the cover stories, and I really love them all. And Django's is great, too. I mean, dude, Maybe you should talk a little bit about it now, dude, since it's your favorite.
Yeah, I love the Django, and I love the Django cover story. It's how he becomes buds with Full Body. Like, well, for one, I loved Django just as it was, and his cover story is absolutely hysterical. I think up to this point, like it's a little more funny, a little more happens than the other ones. I think that progressively goes on as we get more cover stories, with the exception of Walpole's, I guess, which is mostly just gags the entire time.
And Gadatsu's too.
And Gadatsu's, yeah. But yeah.
This is a little more connected, but not much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the Django cover story is amazing. I just wish it was animated. It would have been good.
That would be, yeah. I mean, it kind of was for movie 2, 3? I forgot which one that was.
2. But it wasn't really.
No, it wasn't. But I mean...
Mirrorball Island.
Mirrorball Island was, and Django kind of was. And we get that song out of it. 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
Django.
You want to talk about Mr. Two, Zach?
Well, I just briefly want to talk about Mr. 2 and Mr. 3 since they are very prominent in the story in Impel Down and Marineford. But it's interesting. It was interesting reading it, knowing... I mean, it's Oda, so you know everyone's going to come back, but just having seen them come back, and how much they change.
Right, because Mr. 3 is like this big fish, smart guy in the first half of the Grand Line, but he's kind of like a scrub sidekick when you get
Which already
Marineford.
starts happening in Alabasta. Yeah. Like, next time we'll probably talk about Mr. 3 kind of gets his ass handed to him by his superior, which is interesting. Even seeing the little stuff with Crocodile here was interesting, thinking of where the story goes, mostly next time.
Yeah. Go ahead. Just to talk about Garp, this is kind of changing topics, but going back to Garp and the fact that we find out that he's Luffy's grandfather, and we saw the Reverie in the drama arc.
Reverie's not just important for that, yeah.
Yeah, with Monkey. Oh no, we don't know, but it's Monkey D. Dragon. This is Luffy's father. It's amazing to me that Garp was able to conceal the fact of his being Dragon's father for so long. How the hell
was that concealed? Like from the Marines?
No, I don't think so. The Dragon having a son, though, I think is...
That was, yeah.
Yeah.
But how long has Garp been in the Marines, and where does he have this family where he can have Dragon, his son?
Look, think about it this way. Garp hid Roger's son and Dragon's son. Yeah. Which, yes, is his grandson. Hid them both and got away with it because everyone loves Garp. He must have done something. I mean, he clearly was a super heroic Marine during his heyday. He had been offered admiralship, I believe, on several occasions and rejected it, that we learn in Chapter 0.
It's mentioned in Film Z as well, right?
I think it was mentioned in both, yeah. He's just such an interesting character, and we get the very first bits of him in that cover story, which is a cool way to introduce such a major character.
In the Reverie, they talk about, like, in 5 to 6 years, this guy's going to be really dangerous, and after the time skip, it's 8 years on, and yeah, he's really dangerous. The revolutionaries are a problem for the world government now.
He's the most wanted man in the world, Dragon. The other thing about the Reverie I want to talk about was Cobra. And this is from very recent information that I'm kind of getting things here. And if Oda really planned this, wow. I sound like Greg right now. But
it's nice that you recognize that.
The fact that Wapol kind of says, ugh, like, I think he says something like, I hate the Nefertari family or something. Who cares about them? Kind of maybe was a setup that the Nefertaris were the only ones that didn't go to Marijoa, which I kind of cast them as the outcasts of the Reverie group.
Well, yeah, and like the Doflamingo family, they went like from Dressrosa, so the Riku family became the kings, but the Cobra family, they felt the connection to their people. Alabasta was the most peaceful and prosperous nation on the Grand Line, and I think it had a lot to do with the good governance, the good family.
But at the same time, I feel like it may have made them the outcasts at the actual Reverie because of that. That's kind of what I got when I was reading it. Maybe I was thinking too much into that totally possible. Is there anything else? The stuff with Little Garden I do want to mention since we're going backwards.
Right. We established the giants and the fact that everything comes back in One Piece. The fact that Luffy met these giants who were having this 100-year-old duel helps them later on in Enies Lobby when their two subordinates have been taken hostage basically by the government and blackmailed into working for them. It's some good poetic justice.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. And finding out later on that there are more kinds of giants. Just it builds out a world. So you start thinking that there's really only this one place where giants are. But no, giants can be anywhere. You know?
Yeah. Dude, do you have any other points? I think we mentioned everything in Whiskey Peak or hinted very strongly at it.
Yeah. No, that's pretty much it. Although there is a bit that I noticed while reading Drum towards the end of it, where Chopper's trying to leave the castle and Kureha says to him, this is, the only chance you'll ever get to live in a giant castle like this. And I wonder if that's, a little foreshadowing of things to come later. I don't know.
Maybe.
All right. I think we could round this third episode of the read-through off.
This is the interview segment, and with us this week is Urian Brown.
That is correct.
All right. Now, for many of you who may not know, Urian Brown was the editor for One Piece in Shonen Jump and in the volumes from, about 2006 to 2007?
Yeah, they took it away. They finally realized what was happening. So,
but you're still with Viz Media. What is it that you do over there these days?
I work for Shonen Jump, so I run the Shonen Jump podcast. You can go to shonenjump.com and listen to it. A new episode every Monday. And also, I write stuff for shonenjump.com. I write articles. And then I do a lot of PR and outreach and fan stuff at conventions and just Slack. That's my main thing, is slacking around.
Sounds good. So you were actually the editor for these 4 or 5 volumes that we're going over this week on the One Piece read-through, covering most of the early Baroque works and Grand Line stuff from Whiskey Peak gone through the Drum Islands.
Yes, I was a manga editor before I worked at Shonen Jump.
Oh, and where were you editing manga then?
At Viz. I worked at Viz.
Okay. What other manga have you worked on in the past?
Oh, golly. Beat the Vandal Buster, which I really liked, and it was too bad that guy, I guess he got sick or something, but that manga sort of randomly ended. But that was a really fun, neat little manga. And then Kurohime, I did Ranma 1/2. I did... it's all. Oh, Yu Yu Hakusho, that was one of my favorite ones. And Hunter x Hunter, another really fun one to edit. I was doing a lot of Shonen Jump stuff, which is why I made the transition to the magazine.
Wow, Ranma, that takes me back.
Yeah, I finished it out. I was the last editor of Ranma 1/2.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Really neat thing to have on your resume.
I don't know how many jobs that's going to get me, but...
Now, were you around for the inception of the Shonen Jump English magazine?
Yes, I was there. I was not working at Shonen Jump. I was working at America at the time. But I remember how it all happened, and I was very excited by it, and I became a fan right from the first issue. I was like, this is great. This is amazing.
Right. And obviously, One Piece was one of the launch titles for the American Shonen Jump. If you could tell us, how did you come to be editing it, I don't know, about 10 volumes into its run?
Well, An America ended, and then they offered me a job to be a manga editor, and I said, sure. And then back then it was like, here's your titles, take them. I'm like, okay. Someone else was either wanted to get rid of it because they were moving on to a different position, or they just kind of shuffle the titles around when either someone gets promoted, or someone leaves, or someone wants to take on a new title, and then they sort of give up their older one they've been doing for a long time. Not always. There are some people who have edited a manga from the very beginning to as far as it went, but super, super long ones like One Piece almost always have multiple editors throughout the series.
Definitely.
It was one of many.
Dude, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask?
So where are you from?
Me?
Yeah.
me. I'm from the Drum Islands. Actually, it's nice and cold and crispy there all year round. New guy took over. He's much nicer. I'm from Oregon, the coolest state in America.
Ah, sweet. Always wanted to go to Oregon.
It's nice. I mean, if you hate trees, I don't recommend it. But it's a nice mixture of like some hippies, some rednecks, some little bit of this, little bit of that. In Oregon, people are kind of very straightforward folk. They're not like these Californians, which is where I've lived for a long time. But I love Oregon.
Now, you mentioned working at Animerica. I assume that was in Los Angeles or San Francisco?
Viz, all Viz.
Oh, okay.
Animerica was a Viz, was Viz's magazine, which was one of the first anime magazines in America, period. It was like...
I remember that, yeah.
Animerica, Protoculture, Addicts, I think, were the only games in town for... Oh, there was one more, but I forgot the name of it. For a long time, and so that was how a lot of people learned about anime, was through Animerica. When there was like 5 VHS tapes released a month, all companies combined.
Right.
That's so funny. I was talking on Twitter the other day about how I remember back in the day when anime tapes were like $40 a pop, like at Suncoast.
Well, they were yeah, you're right, $36 for subtitled, and it almost always had a clamshell for some reason.
Yeah.
Just to take up more space.
Yeah, which was weird because it was cheaper to make a subtitle than it was to dub it. But those are more expensive.
Yeah. But now, how did you come to be working at Viz in the first place? How'd you make it from Oregon down to San Francisco?
Oh, geez, the whole story.
Sure.
Well, it was just like young. When you're young, you want to leave your hometown and see the world. And so I left. And I came to California with $500 to my name and I knew one person. And I just, when you're young, you can do anything. It doesn't matter where you work. You're like, well, I'll take a job at Barnes & Noble. That's awesome. That sounds great to me. I'll live in a house with like 5 other people and sleep on the floor because you're just happy to be out and you can do what you want and you're free. It's when you get older is when things get complicated and you don't have that kind of like freedom. So I can't imagine doing that now. But then I just came here and then I worked in this clothing store and there was a girl, I wore like anime shirts like back, way back when, because anime was like, rave and anime were like a thing. Like people went to raves wearing anime shirts and they showed anime on the big screens because it was cool, it was edgy, it was violent, it was dark, it was weird. And so this girl worked at Viz and saw that I wore anime shirts and said, oh, you should apply for this job at Viz. And I started in the mailroom, which back in the day, it was not uncommon to start in the mailroom and work your way up to the company. I don't know if it's like that anymore.
Right on. That's pretty cool, actually. Now, before you ended up working on One Piece, did you have, you knew of the Shonen Jump magazine, obviously you were reading it. Did you have impressions of One Piece before you started to work on it?
Immediately loved it right off the bat. I was blown away by the art. It's unlike any other manga art out there. They're not all like anime looking wacky big sparkly eyes. Everybody just had like really funky fashion, super far out. It reminded me of like Mad Magazine, and it had such incredible energy, and everything was just so dense. I mean, it's kind of tough to read because there's so much going on per panel. It can really wear your eyes out, but there really wasn't, and it was really funny too. So I was completely blown away right off the bat. And a little kid like stabs himself in the face to show how tough he is. I mean, that's pretty cool. I don't recommend
it. It grabs you right from chapter 1 there.
Yeah, right away. So I immediately liked it right away. And everything in the magazine I liked right away. I didn't think there was a bad one in there. I mean, it was the kind of like the best hits of the last 10 years. It was Yu Yu Hakusho, Yu-Gi-Oh, Naruto, not from the very beginning, but pretty soon, like second or third issue. One Piece and Sandland,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like just, how could they're all big hits or.
I've actually had a lot of people telling me on Twitter in the last few weeks to go back and read that original Yu-Gi-Oh manga because apparently it's super weird.
Yes, I did an interview. I hope to do an interview with him at Anime Expo. That would be really great. Yeah, the 3-in-1s are out. There's 2 volumes of them out right now, and it's mind melting. It's so unbelievably crazy, and just the stuff that happens. I can't believe they put in a kids magazine. Like the last one, they were fighting. The game was to put a knife in between your teeth with the point going into your mouth, and then try to punch each other.
Oh my God.
What are you like? This is outrageous.
Try this, kids at home.
Another panel like broke every rule we had back then. It was a lot more censored because Shonen Jump was more mainstream, and they were trying to get it into like Scholastic and stuff. And one panel is like a gun pointed at a kid, and the guy's smoking a cigarette while drinking alcohol, like all in the same panel. That's really dark, weird, super violent, crazy stuff, and fun. It's super funny too.
Nice. Now everyone has a favorite character in most things that they read or watch. Who is your favorite One Piece character? You know, going into before you started editing it.
Well, that's just, I'd say, one of those rare manga where the main character is my favorite. He's just hilarious. He's a funny dude. He's really, really funny, and he's ridiculous, and never gives up, and all that good stuff. But yeah, he's very likable. The main character is very likable, mainly because he's goofy. Like even when he sees an enemy with a new power, he'll be like, "Wow, that's cool!" And he eats so much food, he becomes super fat, and he just does a lot of ridiculous things. Probably second is Usopp, who seems to steal the show more and more these days.
Yeah, he's definitely the everyman of the crew.
Yeah, I think everybody.
And I think that makes One Piece kind of unique. I mean, maybe it's not completely unique, but I think it is consistently one of the more, I don't want to say moral shows, but it has consistent positive themes more so than just about anything else I've read. Like an unambiguous moral message.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
Luffy's a good guy, and he's always going to do the right thing, and you can count on that. Right. Even if the right thing's beating up Usopp sometimes, but he's always going to do it. He is the textbook definition of a hero you can believe in.
Right, and going back to Whiskey Peak, he picks a fight with Zoro, and he thinks that Zoro killed all these people that were giving them food and drinks and stuff.
Right. Yeah. This was it's funny because back at this time it wasn't that popular in America, and I just could not figure out why fans did not jump on the One Piece train. And I guess maybe the watching that 4Kids gave it as when they tried to Americanize it and turn it into a cartoon, turned a lot of fans off or something. But I'm blown away. Like, how come I don't see more cosplays at cons? How come people don't love it as much as they should? And now, of course, it's like fandom is huge. It's at every con. There's a billion people dress up like it, and I think a lot of that is. It got so big in Japan, American fans could no longer ignore it.
Mm-hmm. I think that happened around. I mean, it happened to coincide with around the time we started the podcast, because I noticed that we started going to cons for the podcast in like late 2009.
Wait, 2001, right? You guys started the podcast?
2009, actually.
Oh, 9, okay.
Yeah.
2001. They have podcasts in 2001? Maybe too early.
Actually, they started in like 03, 04, I think, generally. Okay. But we hardly saw any One Piece cosplay back then in 2009, but it really started to pick up into 2010 and 2011. And by like Otakon 2010 or 2011, they had massive meetups for the show, and it really exploded in popularity around the time of the Strong World movie that came out.
Yeah. Now you can't get away from it. It's everywhere you go, which is great. I'm really happy and that's translated to people buying it too. So I'm very, very happy to see all the fans. I mean, it feels like he could keep it up forever, actually, based on the fact that the art hasn't seemed to dip at all, and he's still coming up with new locales and new stories. And so, to me, he seems to be an endless well of creativity, especially in his character designs. It's like, at this point, how many characters has he designed? Hundreds, and he still comes up with wacky new looks. So
and even the characters, even the current characters that we've had for the whole series, they've evolved quite a bit. And I think it was quite obvious with rereading that Chopper material for the first time in a while for this episode. You can't help but notice how different he looks these days.
Yeah. I wish Chopper got more to do. He's sort of outside of the back burner right now in this current arc. I'm sure I'll do something with him. One of my favorite parts of these ones I edited is in 14, the giant spinning wax candelabra. That just completely blew my mind. I didn't even know what a candelabra was. I had to look like, what is it? I thought it was a made-up Japanese word. I'm like, what the heck's a candelabra? But I don't hang out at fancy places, so I guess I didn't know. But and there's one part where Zolo is stuck there. Yep. And he's like, that's it. I'm going to cut off my leg. And then he keeps hacking at his leg. And, it's fun. Looking back now, it's like, he probably could have cut that off in one whack. And I'm glad he didn't. But
certainly these days. And I think speaking of Zoro, and this is kind of a little bit of a spoiler for the next episode of the read through, but he makes a couple of references throughout these few volumes, the early Baroque works material, to the fact that he can't cut steel. He actually can't cut steel.
Oh, okay.
And it's something that ends up being really important for him when he takes on Mr. One in Alabasta. It's just the little things you notice when you go back and read through the series like that.
Right, yeah.
There's a lot of seeding by Oda. Alex, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
Which volume did you happen to end at when during your tenure with One Piece?
Oh, I think right after the drum island.
Yeah, I think
17. I guess it was half mine and half someone else's or something.
Okay, so
18. It's 18. Yeah.
18. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I love this arc. I love Wapol. He's still my favorite One Piece villain. He's just when he eats himself. I can't believe it.
And slims down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What
and
was your?
there's a funny panel. One of my favorite panels in the whole thing. When his cannon doesn't go off, and he has these giant eyes and this ridiculous look on his face because the birds come out.
Yeah,
snowbirds. Yeah, I just read that today. That's it's one of my favorite funny panels in the entire manga.
He's a great villain, you know. He's
but it is ridiculous faces.
Yeah, it's a kind of a shocked face that's gone through an evolution over the years, even into the current manga, and it's gotten ridiculous. It just gets better.
Gosh, do you think anybody could ever do the cosplay of Usopp with his eyes spiraling out? Could someone make a mask or something? Because that would just be that would really be an amazing cosplay to see.
I've seen that. Some Japanese cosplayer. Yeah, I saw a picture of a Japanese cosplayer who sort of pulled it off, and I was pretty happy about it.
They do the tongue too?
I don't think they did. I don't remember if they did the tongue or not, but the eyes are what stick out to me.
Yeah. I think the letterer for this has been doing it is still doing it, and has been doing it ever since when I was working on it. So Vanessa Satone, that's really, really impressive. That's someone could.
Yeah, I imagine people, if they're really into it, they get attached to a series like One Piece. It becomes such a reliable thing.
Yeah.
Going back to Whiskey Peak, I'm just sort of I was thinking about how great of a comedic arc it is, and with the way the Luffy and Zoro fight goes, I was wondering if you sort of felt like that was necessarily out of place, because they're supposed to start on this really dangerous sea. They're starting out on the Grand Line, but even though it's a serious situation, they seem to be making light of it. I was wondering if that was a unique approach to you.
The fight between Luffy and Zoro completely caught me off guard. I was like, whoa, why the heck are these guys fighting? But it didn't last very long, so I think the Usopp fight between Luffy's a better fight because it shows that Usopp actually really is a good fighter. He can give Luffy a bit of, some serious chin music.
Right. Yeah. Zoro gets a lot of time to shine, I think, early on through Whiskey Peak and also through Little Garden. And Little Garden really has that sort of you're talking a lot about honor and the honor of pirates, and you can't interfere in a man's fight. And I think it's one of those themes that One Piece really draws out a lot. And I was wondering what you thought about it.
Oh, like Brogy and Rogi? Mm-hmm. Yeah, those guys are cool, man. That's how come no one cosplays as them? I guess it's so long ago and people have already moved on. I don't know. I've never tried to get in the middle of two pirates fight, so not exactly sure about that. This does have the giant goldfish whose poop is as big as the islands.
Oh, yeah.
I should never get to see the poop, but still, that's pretty cool.
All right. Have you been following One Piece? Do you still read it today?
Oh, I work for Shounen Jump. I read it every week, of course.
Of course.
The arc right now is one of the best ever. It's completely Dressrosa I can't praise it enough. Totally killing it.
Right on. And we like to we like to predict how much longer we think that this arc has been going on. It's been kind of a running joke that this arc isn't going to end. I was wondering if you had a guess.
This arc, I think, will end within a month.
All right.
And I'll already, because it's it's the last two, the big fight. So can't go on much longer than that. I can't imagine. But how's he going to top this one? Is what I want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Dressrosa toys that get turned into people, or I feel like get turned into toys. Yeah. The Usopp phase, the whole backstory of Doflamingo, and it's just it's gonna be tough to top this one.
Yeah. It's a real expansion, I think, of the, because people have like they might have negative opinions of arcs that might seem to not be necessarily be connected into the larger world of One Piece. People said that about Skypiea. They've said it about Fishman Island.
Punk Hazard, is that do people get mad about that?
Not as much, but I think this one really sort of expands the universe, because this is tied directly into the world government and all the other sort of larger power structures, and it really sort of sets the stage for One Piece to blossom into its final stage.
Do you think it is? I mean, are they even halfway to their goal?
I think they are more. I think they are more than halfway. I mean, the series has been going on for 18 years now. So
right, manga in time, time is relative in manga.
All right. I was wondering if you had any more favorite moments from the volumes that you edited that you wanted to talk about before we finish up here.
Oh, I think I pretty much did. It's the whole Wapol, like the face with Wapol and him eating himself, and the guy flicking boogers in the candelabra. This is this is good early stuff. Okay. Where do they go after this?
What was that? Sorry.
Where do they go after they leave the little island? The Drum Islands.
Alabasta. That's where we're headed.
Oh, that's the gigantic desert arc. Yeah.
Yep.
Desert levels are always my least favorite levels in video games to play. Snow levels are always my favorite. So I did like Alabasta.
Big Sonic the Hedgehog fan.
Yeah, I like Sonic. I like that early Sonic.
That's all I could think of, because I loved Ice Cap Zone, but I always hated Santopolis.
Yeah, like Mario Brothers,
Yeah.
The snow levels are always the most fun. The desert levels are the most annoying. Keep sinking in that friggin' sand over and over and over.
Yeah. Just looking forward, do you have anything that you'd like to see in One Piece going forward from where the manga is now?
I can't think of anything I would like to see. I can't, because who can guess this manga? I could have never predicted Dressrosa. I couldn't have predicted any of the arcs. I mean, who could think of Punk Hazard, a bunch of gigantic drug-addicted children running around? I mean, who would ever think of these things? So I don't know. But I would like this. Someone brought this up at a Shounen Jump podcast earlier. Mm-hmm. I would. This guy Keith, he's a super fan. He said he thought Luffy would eventually get his own armada, and he would have his whole fleet of different pirates under his banner.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is a cool idea, and I would like to see that. That would be neat.
All right. Well, we're definitely setting up well for that with the current Dressrosa arc, so he's got a lot of allies.
Buggy could be one of his pirates and all these different people. I would also like to know what the One Piece is, so hopefully I don't get hit by a bus and never find out.
I'm sure we'll find out one day.
What do you guys think? We always think it's the dream, it's the journey. That's the One Piece. What do you guys think it is?
I don't know. I had some weird.
You're the One Piece podcast. What do you think it is? You haven't laid in bed late at night when you couldn't sleep and thought about it for hours?
Yeah, I always wondered what it was, because it always seemed so interesting to me that Roger would do what he did after he crossed the ocean. And I always had this weird theory, and I mentioned it last week on the show, that the Void Century is very mysterious to me. And I think that the ancient weapons, I think maybe the world government invented this world. They built the Grand Line. They built the Calm Belts. They split the world up like it is. Maybe the final weapon, the Uranus weapon, comes in from outer space and Eneru comes back with it. That would be I don't know what it has to do with the One Piece necessarily, but I don't know. I'm just so curious for the larger world of One Piece. What's the significance of that giant astronomical model we saw in the library at O'Hara? I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of rambling here, because I don't know.
That was a very amazing ramble. You have thought about it, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the One Piece is kind of a MacGuffin. It really is. I mean, I think Oda has said in the past that it wouldn't just be the journey, but I think the journey really is the most important thing, even if it isn't the One Piece.
Right.
Dude, did you want to guess at anything?
That's actually kind of what I'm thinking as well. So
yeah, One Piece is just sort of a MacGuffin.
Maybe they can go to space. That'd be cool. Like the One Piece, they have to make a special space boat, and then they can fly. Do you ever watch the Gilligan's Island cartoon, Gilligan's Island in Outer Space, Gilligan's Planet? In the 80s, they made a
Is this a real thing?
Yeah, it's real.
ridiculous cartoon called Gilligan's Planet, where they all go somehow go on a 3-hour space tour and land on a planet. And I think also Happy Days went to outer space. I think there's like
No. Happy Days had a time traveling dog.
Maybe Meatballs went to outer space. There's definitely some like crazy show like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to see anything that he can do. And Dressrosa is just basically based on Spain.
Right.
But he took that one country and turned it into something absolutely amazing. So there's plenty of countries left in the world. I'd like to see him go to Africa.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Some kind of crazy African adventure. That'd be great, you know. So anywhere they go, I'll be happy because he's never let me down yet. Although
that's true.
Skypiea was probably my least favorite arc because it was kind of hard to follow for me.
Mm. Yeah. And
what's your least favorite?
Oh, probably Fishman Island still. And I'm still a little bitter about it. I haven't reread it yet.
Oh.
I liked a lot that not everybody liked. I liked Thriller Bark a lot. That was really fun. Maybe that's my love for Halloween coming through or something, but that was so much fun to read.
Definitely. That one was a lot of fun. Is there any sort of final words you'd like to say to the One Piece fans out there who listen to this?
Thank you guys for your support of One Piece. I'm glad that it finally took off and people could recognize that it really is a unique manga in so many ways, not just the art, but just the sheer amount of creativity and the epic spans. Is spans a word? Sparse, a big gigantic world he created.
Expansive,
expansive world that he created. So that I'm glad that it's finally getting the love that I always thought it deserved. And listen to the Shonen Jump podcast. It's like me with a bunch of other people who are also as interesting, at least as interesting, if not more.
All right. Well, thank you, Urian Brown, former editor for One Piece from Viz, for coming on the show today.
You're welcome, and I hope to see you lovable lads at Anime Expo or Comic-Con or something.
I'm not sure if we'll be there, but I'm sure some of them from the podcast will be there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for coming on.
All right. Later.
This has been the third episode of the Great One Piece Read-Through. Next week is going to be a good week to go through some One Piece. We are only going through one arc next week in its entirety. We're going through Alabasta, which is volumes 18 through 23. Our special guest next week is going to be Jason Thompson, who was the original editor for One Piece. He has also written, he edited many series for Viz Manga. He also is an author for Manga The Complete Guide. He has worked at Anime News Network in House of a Thousand Manga and a lot more. He is a very well-known, very well-versed manga enthusiast, and he's and still a One Piece fan. He read through. I think he read through all of Naruto in like 2 weeks or a week, so he kind of understands what we'll be going through here.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anyone we've ever had on any of our podcasts who has read more different kinds of manga than him.
Yeah, so I'm interested in how he sees things in I guess a grander scheme here. So I'm very excited to have him on.
I'd be curious to ask him about the place of One Piece in like the pantheon of manga historically.
So the plan is to have him on next week. If for some reason that doesn't happen, we'll have him on in a future episode. I think we'll definitely have him at some point. Just because sometimes things change, I don't want to say definitely. But the plan is right now to have Jason Thompson on. The next episode, which will be out on June 11th. So I think that's it for that. Dude, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me all the time, always, on Twitter. My handle is dude! And hey, check out my Tumblr while you're at it. It's the same exact handle. Same with Instagram. Whoa, that's crazy. Also, if you want to hear me some more, you can check out the One Piece podcast and our sister site, or our sister podcast, rather, with my co-host Steve Yurko, 20 Minutes of Bullshit, where we talk about anything and everything that is going through our minds at the time.
I think the next episode of that, for those listening now, will be out on June 15th or so. Yeah, sounds good. Ed, where can good people contact you?
Well, I am on Twitter at Edward E. Festicio. And that's pretty much where you can find me.
Yeah. I'm on
I've been
Twitter
tweeting more. I've been tweeting a lot of OP read through hashtag stuff lately. I've been taking some pictures.
Yeah, I'm twitter.com/Zach_Logan. I have as well. Please keep hashtagging OP read through as you're reading along. It's really fun reading everyone's comments and screen caps and what they find cool and maybe what they don't find cool. So yeah, please keep doing that. That interaction is just a lot of fun. And please check out that hashtag because you'll see a lot of really cool insight from a lot of different people and a lot of stuff we don't have time to talk about, although apparently we have a lot of time to talk about things. So yeah, I think that's everything. Ed, how could the good people out there contact us?
Well, Zach, the podcast is at onepiecepodcast.com, twitter.com, youtube.com, and facebook.com/onepiecepodcast. Hashtag OP Readthrough, as you said. We are onepiecepodcast at gmail.com is our email address. onepiecepodcast.tumblr.com for news updates and funny pictures. One Piece Podcast is our Skype name. You can subscribe on SoundCloud, subscribe on Stitcher Smart Radio app, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, or call us on our phone number. Zach?
You can call us at 347-497-MAJI.
Maji.
That phone number again is 347-497-6254. Call anytime with your questions, comments, and theories.
And recipes for mushroom soup.
Yes. I forgot to mention the mushroom bubbles, which is something I did not know.
You just mentioned it right now. Whenever people talk about mushrooms, their speech bubbles look like mushrooms. There you go.
There you go.
Thank you, Ed. So yeah, once again, next week we're going through all of Alabasta. Your assignment for next week is to read volumes 18 through 23. You have until Thursday, June 11th, to do that, and we will have Jason Thompson joining us. Maybe other people, maybe less people than I just mentioned. We'll find out. So we'll see you see you Monday for the One Piece podcast, and on Thursday for a brand new One Piece read through. My name is Zach.
Σε μια περιπέτεια δυνατή με τον Drake και τους φίλους του μαζί. Drake. Θάλασσες και πέλαγα σε πλοίο πειρατικό. Όλοι θα διασχίσουμε με φίλο το γερό. Ο Drake, ο καπετάνιος μας, σημαία πειρατική. Και ο στόχος μας να φτάσουμε στην κόκκινη γραμμή. Τους κακούς να νικάμε στη στιγμή. Με μυαλό και με δύναμη μαζί. Καπετάνιε Drake, στο κυνήγι του θησαυρού. Πάμε τώρα παιδιά, το καράβι πλέει σε άγνωστα νερά. Μα ο Drake δεν φοβάται, είναι τολμηρός. Drake, Drake, Drake.
It's warming up my voice.
And okay.